And we're live. This is Off Chain with Jimmy Song, and with me today is a special guest, Daniel Krawisz. He's currently the developer, a developer at Stash Crypto. He's one of the founders of the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. He's currently the director of research there. I just want to thank you so much for coming on my first show, Daniel.
Oh, thanks so much. Software engineer, not developer. A slight mistake, but software engineer better.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. That makes sense. But anyway, I just wanted to let people know what you do and how long you've been in Bitcoin. So first question I have for you was first time you heard about Bitcoin, what was that like?
Well, as it happens, I have a comic strip that I made, so I'm going to show it to the audience. And if you want to see the whole thing, you can go to my Fur Affinity profile, which is my username is Cosmos Stag. So this is all true.
Ross Ulbricht, really?
Yes, my hero, my future hero. At the time, I was not impressed by him. In 2009, which is the same year that Bitcoin started, I attended an event called 3-Day Startup, where the idea was a group of young people are going to try to invent a bunch of startup ideas and see what sticks. Mm-hmm. So he was there, and he was developing the Silk Road there. We didn't know that that's what it was. But that's what he was doing. That's what his plan was. And he told me about Bitcoin, okay? Mm-hmm. And at the time, the price of Bitcoin was 0. So I kind of dismissed him. I told him it was a dumb idea and it was never going to work. Because, I'm an Austrian economist. I mean, not professionally, but that's what I think about economics. So I told him that if the price is 0 now, it can't magically get a price later. But that is what it ultimately happened. So I was wrong about that. So now, when I learned that Bitcoin did have a price, then I realized, well, then I changed my mind. I decided that the idea was good. So in the second panel here, I have what it was like back in the early days. So this is a website that I found off of the Wayback Machine. And back in those days, it was like amazing that anything would accept Bitcoin for anything. So there are all kinds of like random places that sell odd things for Bitcoin. And that is well, you can look at the rest of the comic if you want, but that's basically how it started.
Wow, that's so fascinating. You heard about it in 2009 from Ross Ulbricht, and then in 2010 you just sort of saw it. And then when did you really get into Bitcoin?
Okay, so then in 2011, that is when the first, well, I mean, Bitcoin was pretty manic, from the moment it started trading. Mm-hmm. But like that, that was sort of like it accelerated a little bit in early 2010. And well, I just wasn't paying enough attention. I wish I had gotten it earlier, obviously. But when I saw that, I thought that is a monetary phenomenon, that it is not that was really the only explanation that I could think of, because Bitcoins are not directly useful for anything. Okay, so the only reason that they could have value is that it's being used as money. So based on what I understood about Austrian economics, I said, well, if it continues to succeed, it'll take over the world. I mean, that's really what will happen. So
going from one extreme to the other.
Then so I got in. Well, I got in the middle of the 2010 mania.
Wow. 2010.
2011.
11?
Sorry.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, 2011.
Okay.
And I didn't engage with the Bitcoin community until 2013. So some friends and I had discussion groups at the University of Texas at Austin. First, we had a libertarian group, but we had a very active libertarian group. So we started more groups, and so some of us started an Austrian economics group, and that was great. And around 2012, I was telling people, like, you guys are libertarians, you should want to get some Bitcoin just in case. Nobody listened to me right then, but my friends started listening to me in early 2013. And we started a crypto anarchy group because now we discovered the cypherpunks, and we were like, wow, these guys are great, So we had a discussion group for cypherpunk stuff. And we also followed Bitcoin news for a while. And once we really started engaging with the Bitcoin community, we decided that we had a lot to offer, okay? Because, well, Bitcoin has always been completely crazy, which is one thing I like about it. But in fact, I would say that Bitcoin has been not crazy enough the last couple of years, and I am very happy that the craziness is returning. What we saw, or what we thought was that, or our assessment was that the Bitcoin community was not sufficiently aware of the cypherpunks or Austrian economics, So lots of people in Bitcoin had very few people in Bitcoin had the same idea about why Bitcoin was valuable as we did. And there was also, quite a bit of, there was a sentiment that we should try to distance ourselves from the cypherpunks because, those anarchists, that's too controversial. So I and Michael Goldstein and Pierre Rochard started the website called the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. And we called it that because Satoshi Nakamoto is our hero, and he's definitely can be a board member if he ever shows up again. And the idea was to merge Austrian ideas with cypherpunk ideas and keep cypherpunk ideas alive, like have a nice place on the web for them. Because at the time, they were kind of difficult to find. They were kind of dispersed. So we wanted to put everything together in a nice place. So you can see that now. It's at nakamotoinstitute.org.
Yeah, and you can definitely, there are links below this this YouTube video that are going to be there to some of Daniel's writings from the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. So that's obviously how you got into Bitcoin proper. How did you get into Bitcoin development?
So 2012 is when I took my first cryptography course. And, I had already had Bitcoins by then, but I didn't have any idea how they worked. I was just like, I can send them anywhere and there isn't a central authority. So that's pretty much all I need to know. They're great, But, when I learned about digital signatures, that just kind of made me want to learn a lot more. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it blew my mind when it still looks like magic to me. And I work in this stuff every day.
And, Bitcoin, at the bottom, Bitcoin is not all that complicated. Like if you really wanted to make your own Bitcoin full node, yes, that would be very complicated. But the idea behind it is not very complicated. If you want to understand how Bitcoin works below the hood, you need digital signatures and Merkle trees and proof of work. and that's really all you need to know to understand, everything about it.
Well, I think maybe some of this, how script works and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. So there's the scripting language. Well, that's whatever. Not very well, but it does. It does stuff.
So
I got into. So I was in a software engineering master's program at the time, and that was kind of a coincidence. But then I was like, oh, I am only doing Bitcoin stuff from now on. Like, this is sorry, my light went out. That's really what I wanted to do. So I learned everything about Bitcoin, eventually I managed to work for some of the Bitcoin companies. But I don't think there isn't much of a story there.
Okay.
I just learned about it and then I got a job. So anybody can do that.
Okay. Well, I obviously you've done a lot of different things, and cryptography was certainly a big driver of that. I just want to take a pause here and thank the 330 live viewers that are watching right now. Please give us a thumbs up and a share so other people can discover this video and this live broadcast that we're doing. All right, so another question for you, Daniel, and this is where we get to the meat of the discussion. What's the biggest challenge facing Bitcoin today?
Oh, I don't know. What what my axe to grind right now is I want Bitcoin to be led by the investors. So right now, my impression is that there is too much leading being done by people whose claim to fame is that they added a lot of code to the Bitcoin Core repository. Okay, I don't think that that's a very good reason to be a leader. I think that the leaders should be the people who are taking risks with their money. So people who are invested in Bitcoin. So right now, I think that Bitcoin is like a company that is being run too much by the managers, by the CEO, and it's being run according to and there is not enough direct control by the investors.
Well, I mean, just to push back on that a little bit, why is that? Why do you think that it's the investors should have as much of a say? We know that in many startups, for example, the money comes from the VCs, but the actual workers, the ones that do the work, are the ones that make the day-to-day decisions. Why wouldn't that apply to Bitcoin?
Okay, well, so no, I don't want to make day-to-day decisions, but I want the investors to provide the overall vision of what Bitcoin is and where it's going. Okay, but investors don't make day-to-day decisions. That they hire managers to do that, but the investors should provide the vision. And
why is that though? Because if you think about it, again, like the traditional company model, it's whoever has sort of the most skin in the game is not necessarily the backers of the venture, but it's actually the people that are working in it, that are spending not just their money, but also their time. And that seems like an utterly fair thing to say is, hey, well, these are the people that are really in the weeds, that know what's going on. And instead of like sort of listening to somebody that may have put some money in, how about like leaving the decisions up to people that really, want to, that are involved every day, that know sort of the technical details and things like that? Why would you say they don't deserve as much of a voice?
Well, the investors are really the only people whose incentives is totally aligned with what's good for Bitcoin. Because they get richer if Bitcoin gets better. And they get poorer if Bitcoin gets worse. And that is the only group that happens to. And now let's talk about the VC model, okay? So, well, first of all, like another of my heroes is Warren Buffett, okay? I don't like investors who just sort of trying to find tiny companies just so that they can sell them later to make an IPO. Like, to me, that is not that's not necessarily a good model, because you could just be selling to other dumber investors later and not making a company that has real value. And that's what happens in a bubble economy. And and there's a lot about our economy now that is like a bubble. Actually, I have a great book to recommend on that. It's called Disrupted, and I don't remember the name of the author, but it's about a Newsweek journalist. He's the writer, and he joins a crazy tech startup that's like a cult. Anyway, I really recommend it. And this tech startup is a lot like the Bitcoin world. So and my other answer is that ultimately it is the investors who do control Bitcoin. Okay, I would say that, and that's because they're the ones who have the power to sell, and that is ultimately what determines the success of Bitcoin, is whether the investors want to stay in or whether they want to leave. Okay, so that is the final decision, and I would like to see investors using this power a little more directly with Bitcoin.
So you're advocating for a Carl Icahn like activist investor kind of model,
right? I would like investors to assert their control over Bitcoin a little more, but I don't want investors to be micromanagers.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out where that line is, though, right? Like, because there's a direction which might be, hey, we would like more throughput on transactions, versus, hey, we want you to do it this way. How do you draw the line between micromanaging and giving a good direction?
I don't know. That's an inherently hard problem.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to another question I have. What's one thing you would fix if consensus were not a problem? What's something that you would fix about Bitcoin if consensus were not a problem?
What is one thing? Okay. I don't know. I would say that I don't see that the concerns about the small blockers are very good. Okay, so I would like to focus on increasing the bandwidth of Bitcoin, because to me that's what makes Bitcoin useful, is that I can just easily send Bitcoin to anybody. So if the price of transactions is high, I don't like that. That makes Bitcoin less valuable to me.
Is that the main property, though? I want to push back on that just a little bit, because I think you and I have talked in the past about this, but medium of exchange is one property of it, but store of value is also another. Part of the reason why Bitcoin is so valuable is that it's relatively easy to secure. It's not like gold, where you have to have vaulting fees and things like that, or you have to bury it in your backyard and physically get it whenever you move or something. Bitcoin has this property that, it's just a 256-bit number that you have to store somewhere in some form. And as long as you do that, you are bearing, it's a bearer instrument. You have it. What would you say to that argument?
Okay, well, I would say that the thing that makes money a good money is liquidity, and that means you can get rid of it easily. Okay, so yes, it is important that, well, you also need to be able to keep it. Okay, like if you can't, if it can be taken away easily, that's really more important. So yes, I agree with you that the most important thing is that you can secure it and that you can hold it forever. But you know, you also need to be able to get rid of it easily, okay? Because that's sort of like in the economy, the reason that you're holding cash is that it's the most liquid good, and that means you can respond to changes in the economy more quickly than other people. Okay, so if you are holding a stock and you know, there's going to be a stock market crash, you have to react. I need to get a new lighting situation around here, but you need to sell your stock quickly. You need to react quickly in the event of a stock market crash, right? So the person who is holding cash then, he's the quickest one to react, and that's why a particular good is used as cash in a stock market. So, I mean,
right.
Ultimately, we can use Bitcoin by saying that they're going to be banks and they're going to, settle their accounts at the end of the day, kind of like banks work now. So you can issue money orders and you can trade stocks with Bitcoin denominated assets, right? So you could have an economy that works like that. But to me, like the more that you need to rely on Bitcoin banks, that's the greater the cost. So there is a limit to the bandwidth that Bitcoin can have, and if we want more transactions than that, we have to find a different solution. But I want the bandwidth to be related to the physical limits of the internet. I don't want it to be an arbitrary number that was just randomly put in at an earlier time, okay, for a completely different reason.
Well, so I mean, not to get too deep into the scaling debate, but do you feel like payment channels or Lightning Network or all these other second layer solutions solve that problem?
Well, those are Bitcoin banks. That's a Bitcoin bank, right? Like, you have to have somebody else who is in control of your money, if you want to have.
What do you mean by control then? Because it's definitely not the case that they can just take your money. You need to sign it over.
Oh, right. So this is the thing where like we make a transaction that keeps changing, right? And then when we're ready, we send it out into the network.
Yeah. So you do technical netting is, I think, the term.
But that's still different from if I want to buy from, lots of people, right?
Well, so the idea behind Lightning is that you can have an entire network where you can pay into the channel and it gets hopped over to the person that you're paying, and it can all be done trustlessly on each node, so that it doesn't require you to trust anyone with your money.
Okay, well, I'll have to read up on that.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Here's another question. Let's go to some of the user questions that people had. I tweeted this out earlier today, and I asked people to respond to the tweet with questions for Daniel, and we had some interesting ones. Let's look at it. Here it is. All right. So first question is from Internet of Money Node 2X. Daniel recently claimed he was a software developer for Stash. Ask him details of what he develops and why he keeps demanding other devs create and support a hard fork for him, but he refuses to develop one himself or refuses to hire more competent devs to create one for him.
Okay, so first of all, my work for Stash is top secret, so I can't talk about it. Don't you want to know what it is now? Like, you should read the Open Transactions white paper. That's public, and then you basically get an idea about what we're working on. And those are two separate questions. So that's what I'm working on at Stash. Now, as for like why I'm making demands, so like if I were to threaten to sell my Bitcoins, you know, nothing would really happen because I don't have that kind of money. But what I want is for lots of investors to adopt my attitude, okay? So I want investors to be more demanding and, you know, more willing to get mad. And so, you know, I say that the power to sell means that you have the power to make demands, okay? Because if you don't like what you have, you know, if they're not moving it in a direction you want, then you can make it shrink. You know what I mean? So if I don't like where Bitcoin is going, and I have like way more Bitcoins than I do have, then I can make Bitcoin shrink. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I mean, it sounds like you're advocating for the users to sort of unionize and sell all at once, unless they get what they want from the currency. Is that?
Well, I don't think that they need to coordinate this, really. I think that if all Bitcoin investors got angry and more demanding more easily, there doesn't need to be coordination. That it would just happen naturally, you know. So I don't want.
I don't people are currently angry about like the 2x hard fork, because that certainly seems to be the case, at least from my perspective.
Well, good, but actually, I'm happy about forks. I'm glad this is all happening. I was angry before. Now I'm happy because I like forks.
Why do you like forks, Daniel?
Because that is a good choice that the investors are being offered. So if Bitcoin splits, then that is a much more even, you know, comparison than between Bitcoin and an altcoin. So, you know, for example, I was arguing with what's his name?
Paul Sork?
Who?
Paul or somebody else?
Adam Back on Twitter.
Oh.
And what was I saying? Now I forgot why I wanted to remember his name.
It was about hard forks and why you like them. Oh,
so what was he saying? I just don't remember what I was saying.
Yeah.
So what was the question? Oh, why do I like hard forks? Okay, so it's a more even choice between Bitcoin and now I remember. Okay, what he was saying is that investors have consistently chosen what he is offering. But to me, like Bitcoin versus altcoins, that's not a real choice. Okay, if we're going to talk money, I'm going to go with the bigger one. Okay, like the differences between the technology is not very important in my opinion. Like it is the bigger money that is the more useful in general. So Bitcoin is better than the dollar, but I don't think any of, you know, the technological differences between Bitcoin and any of the other cryptocurrencies are that important. It's about which is bigger. So, you know, I don't think that is a valid claim that the reason investors are choosing Bitcoin is because they want what Adam Back is offering. So when there is a fork, that's a much more even split comparison.
Is it really that even though? Because you got like a whole infrastructure that Bitcoin has that Bitcoin Cash no longer has, right? Like wallets and a lot of exchanges and merchants certainly. all this infrastructure still stayed with Bitcoin, whereas Bitcoin Cash really didn't get much of it. So I like, how do you feel about the fact that that part of the ecosystem isn't that even?
Oh, well, in the future, investors should want everything to be a lot more even. So that is a problem. But investors should like forks because it is a choice that is offered to them. So they should want things to be even, and they should want a fair fight. So I would say right now we don't have a very fair fight. And I don't like that. I want to have a fair fight.
And when you say a fair fight, and I think my thoughts on hard forks have changed over the last few months as well, just seeing how this one went. Do you think that may be why Bitcoin price has gone up, is because maybe investors felt like they had a voice again or something like that?
Well, so the total price. So anyway, my definition of Bitcoin is Bitcoin Cash plus Bitcoin Core, okay? Because if I had Bitcoin before and it splits in two, well, the two together are Bitcoin.
Yeah, Max Kaiser named it BTCH, which he could pronounce bitch. But yeah,
that's funny. Okay, well, normally I don't like Max Kaiser, but I do like it that he has a word for it. That's good. People should come up with a word for it. But to me, that's just Bitcoin. If Bitcoin splits, you know, that is the two halves together are Bitcoin. You know, I don't see that there is any other. Well, I mean, why would you pick one chain right off the bat and say that one is Bitcoin and the other one is an altcoin? To me, it's arbitrary. Like, they both have the same history up to a certain point, then they split. You know, I don't think that there's any objective reason that you can say one of them is Bitcoin and one is the altcoin.
Wait, hold on, Daniel. So you're wanting the investors to be able to choose with a hard fork, but you're also at the same time saying that there's no real difference between the two. How do you reconcile those two statements?
Well, there is no. Well, so like there is no. Neither one is special, is what I'm saying. So like Bitcoin is special among the cryptocurrencies because it was created first. And to me, you know, I think that is the main reason that it's the most valuable, is the fact that it was created first. Okay. But when a split happens, that is one event. Okay. So there is nothing differentiating the two that should give one the special title. But there is a difference in terms, one of them has different rules than the other. Okay, that is a difference, but neither one of them is the special one.
Well, I mean, I think in this particular case, the entire network effect is on one side and the other one is sort of like trying to piggyback on it. So, I mean, would it be at least fair to say in this particular case that there is one that's special and maybe one that's not as special?
Right, but I think that is unfair, okay? Like if, you know, if, you know, that is a...
that's not a fair fight, I think.
Yeah. So I want there to be a fair fight.
Okay, well, how would you characterize sort of like the 2x split that looks like it's coming up? You have SegWit 2x on one side, and you have maybe you know, Bitcoin Core on the other side. No one's really named it yet. But how would you characterize that fight? What would you say? Is that more even? Is that less even? How would you characterize that?
Actually, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But it's definitely going to be good.
So you're actually looking forward to this next fork, is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, so like one thing that, like, if there's going to be a cabal of people who are, you know, the core devs of Bitcoin, there needs to be a way that the dynasty can end and be replaced by a new dynasty. You know, I don't want there to be like a continuous dynasty. You know, when I get annoyed with one dynasty, there should be conflict, and then there should be a fight, and maybe a victor will emerge.
So you're talking about sort of like a revolution in crypto where the governance is not to your liking, that you could replace them, something like that?
Yeah, revolution. Yeah, exactly. That's what I want. And that's what's happening now. There's kind of like it's kind of like a civil war. So to me, like if I am an investor in a country and well, let's say I'm like the Rothschilds, right? I'm going to invest in both sides, right? Because I'm a smart investor, so I want to be on both sides because one of them is going to win. Well, or if you're a a company and you're giving money to politicians, you want to have a Democrat and a Republican in your pocket, right? So that to me, that's the smart thing for an investor to do, is to just stay invested on both sides. And but by the way, there's a big difference between Bitcoin and altcoins, because you cannot ever buy all of the altcoins, right? Because people can just keep creating them forever. Okay, so that's what I don't like about altcoins. You cannot. There's no such thing as an index fund for altcoins.
No S&P 500.
Yeah, right.
Or 5,000, I guess that would be the more accurate.
But when Bitcoin splits, you're automatically diversified. So I like that. That's good.
Only if you're a holder, though. What about new investors? What about them? Like yeah, I mean, does that count into the fight? Like, because it's not like it's a static pool of investors here.
Well, they have to make their own decision. I mean, I would say that it is not. We don't know who is going to win. I would say that it is very likely that some form of Bitcoin is going to win out over the altcoins. But I don't think it is known which fork of Bitcoin is going to be the Bitcoin. Okay, so if you're a new investor in Bitcoin, I think that you should be diversified. But
in the different Bitcoins. The different Bitcoins.
If you think that one is definitely better, then you should get a little more of that one.
Interesting. All right. So another question that we had from Twitter was, why shouldn't devs be able to be investors? I think this is talking about sort of your stance that investors should be in charge. So can you speak to this question?
Right. So obviously there's no reason devs can't be investors. But what I say is that, like, if you have contributed a lot of code, that's good. Okay, but still the main reason that you should be influential is because of your investment. It's not.
Is that really true? Because you're like the person that's actually working on something, wouldn't they know better about what's going on and be able to, or shouldn't they be at least empowered to make some of these decisions instead of sort of going to the investor every time, I think, as your advocate?
Well, remember when we were talking earlier, when I said investors shouldn't make day-to-day decisions and they shouldn't micromanage, right? So if you're a developer, then you should make day-to-day decisions. Okay, you're the one making the day-to-day decisions, but it should be the investors as a whole who are providing the overall vision, and you shouldn't you shouldn't get any special privilege there.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this earlier, and in case you're just tuning in, I want to thank all 450 live viewers. Give us a thumbs up and a share so more people can discover this video. But what we talked about before was the fact that a lot of investors oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. Okay, I really need to write this stuff down. But yeah, you're absolutely right that you don't want to micromanage, but there's sort of this middle point where you're giving direction and you're not micromanaging. Like, it's hard to draw that line and to determine what's the responsibility of the developer and what's the responsibility of the investor. And lacking sort of that clear-cut separation of responsibility, how are you supposed to sort of govern anything?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into debates about issues like this. Like, where is the right balance? We have to find it. Like, I just don't. There are lots of things where the borderline is ambiguous, but I can still say that I want more in one direction or another. I don't have to say like where I think the line should be drawn.
Okay. All right. So here's another question, which is, what are the chances of both BTC and BCC surviving in parallel? BTC as eGold and BCC as eCash?
I mean, I don't like it. The money is the most useful if there's one money. Like when people settle on one money, then that's the most useful. One money is more useful than two monies. Okay, so I don't think that they can survive in parallel. I think that they are in conflict for one position. It's just like a Highlander.
There can only be one.
Right.
All right. Another question that I had was, Daniel, are you going to write more articles for the mempool on the Nakamoto Institute website?
Yeah, I've got one in progress now, but it's on a Google Doc. I've just posted it, to my Twitter, so you can see that, and well, maybe you could include a link to it with the video.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And there's another question from Alfonso Pace. He asks if you're 2013 Daniel or 2017 Daniel. I guess there's some perception that you've changed your views over the last 4 years.
Yeah, he's been bugging me about that for a while. Okay, but the thing, I don't think my views have changed. In 2015, I think it was, I wrote an article called "Who Controls Bitcoin?" and I talked about forks and what would happen in the event of a fork. And I said that is good. I like forks back then, so long before any forks happened. And to me, like when I wrote other articles before that are against altcoins, and I wrote the problem with altcoins and the coming demise of the altcoins, which is going way too slowly, if you ask me. But like, if you are talking about a decision between the biggest cryptocurrency and a different one that was started later, that is a very different decision, from when you are choosing between chains from from a single cryptocurrency that's split.
A hard fork versus an altcoin, I think.
Right. That's a qualitatively different decision, and I don't think that I ever changed my mind on it. It's just that I didn't write about forks earlier than that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have sort of come around a lot of people were really scared of hard forks for a long time, especially earlier this year. I know I was, and I wrote like a bunch of articles saying basically that. But it does seem like there's something qualitative about hard forks that I don't think we really understand yet as a community. I know there's a lot of fear around hard forks and whether or not it's going to cause confusion to sort of this hypothetical user or something like newbie or whatever, and saying, oh, they're going to get confused or whatever. I'm starting to come around. I'm starting to feel like a lot of people, when they first encounter Bitcoin, well, they're not going to just go and buy it. They do their own due diligence and research. And I don't know, maybe you're right. We should give more credit to the investor and more power to the investor.
I want the dumbest investors to lose money as quickly as possible. So some people watching this are going to say that I'm going to be pretty poor soon, but we've got to bet. I think that I'm going to be rich still a long time from now. We'll see. Okay, so but I want investors who don't understand Bitcoin to lose money. So I want the investors with the most money to be the best at leading Bitcoin. Okay, and the way that that is going to happen is if investors are given choices that they can make. That's the process by which the dumber investors lose money.
What do you think is sort of the average, I don't know, intelligence of the Bitcoin investor currently?
I don't know, but you know, you need some intelligence to be a good leader, but you know, you don't need to be a genius, I don't think. I think leadership qualities are multifarious. Okay, so this is actually one thing that I don't like about Bitcoin is like whoever is perceived to be the most intelligent is seen as the best leader. That's kind of, you know, how that I mean, that's a parody of what really happens. But I think that
that's a very interesting point, though, because I think you and I know as like developers that oftentimes it isn't the smartest engineer that's the best leader. It's often you know, somebody that's certainly smart but has other qualities that may be more useful to a project. What do you think some of those qualities may be?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a tough one. I wish I had had time to think of this beforehand, but let me think. Oh my gosh. Oh. That's pretty much, well, so ask me such hard questions. No, I'm kidding. Ask me hard questions. I'm trying to think of a book that I like that has good leaders.
Well, I mean, can you think of some examples of people that you consider good leaders that maybe aren't necessarily like the smartest person in the room, but they're, you know, pretty smart and can lead a project well? Like what would your ideal leader for Bitcoin be? Not a single one, but like a group. I think you're advocating sort of like an investors, you know, investors that are smart and can lead on something like this. What would that be?
Okay, well, I actually thought of something. So I think that my ideal leader would be like a less insane version of Captain Kirk. Like, to me, Captain Kirk is a little bit too crazy, but I really like Star Trek. And you know what I like about Captain Kirk is that he has convictions and he is willing to take risks. Mm-hmm. And he is willing to stand by what he thinks is good, you know, even when other people are scared.
Well, I mean, that certainly sounds like a lot of core developers to me, because I mean, they do have some opposition. They're willing to take a risk, and they put some stuff out there that they think would be really good for the network. How's your conception of like sort of a better Captain Kirk better than, you know, what we already have?
Okay, well, no, you know, what I think is that if there is competition, the best will tend to rise up. So, mm-hmm. You know, maybe I'm wrong and the core devs are the best leaders, okay? But, you know, what's going to convince me is if they win against real competition, which I think is we're having more of that now than we had before. So that's what I like about it. But you know, I have not bought. You know, I haven't
chosen
bought more of either chain yet. I have not, you know, made a decision on that. I want there to be competition. But I haven't decided to take a risk on a particular choice yet.
Yeah, you sound like you're advocating for some sort of like survival of the fittest kind of.
Yeah, yes, definitely, survival of the fittest. That's what I want.
And I don't know. It does seem like there's certainly a lot more that they're having to go through, and in this way, maybe these hard forks and this drama that we're seeing in Bitcoin is you know, is a good thing. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the time. I just want to thank you, Daniel. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to everyone that supported this show. Where can people find out more about you, Daniel, and what can they do if they're your fans?
Okay, so well, I have a YouTube channel, and my username is Daniel Krawisz, so you can look for that. I only have I have a couple of videos, but I only have one that's relevant to what we're talking about. And my Twitter account is also Daniel Krawisz, so you can, you can follow me there. Well, let me just conclude with something, okay? So I know that people are going to get to trying to dismiss me because I forgot everything about the Lightning Network earlier. Okay? I know I read a paper on it a while ago, but I guess I just don't remember much about it. So I'll have to review, which I will. But you know, I would argue that what I said that I did know about still makes sense. Okay, that's not a valid reason for dismissing me for saying that there should be competition, and you know, forks are a better investment option than altcoins.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, I know Daniel's a very good developer, and that's why I asked him to be on this show. And you know, I mean, I forget things sometimes, and you know, that was sort of just sprung on him. I do have a bunch of questions I prepare him for on the show. That was not one of them, so it's kind of a little bit of a gotcha there. Anyway, if you would like to donate for the show and to help this show keep going, we have a donation QR code, which I'm showing here. I know it's kind of small on your screen, but the address should be there as well. Anyway, we really enjoyed having you on, Daniel, and thank you all for being there for the very first episode of Off-Chain. We'll hopefully have more episodes on a weekly basis. Thank you very much, and I hope you continue to fight for Bitcoin. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.